Have you ever marveled at a structure so perfectly, but that it seems almost timeless? Like I think about, for example, think about the Golden Gate Bridge or the pyramids of Egypt, right? Behind every great structure is a master builder. In the same way, Hebrews chapter 3 verses 1 through 6, what it does is it presents Jesus as the ultimate builder, not of physical monuments, but of God's spiritual house. Today, we're going to be exploring what that means for our lives and how we are called to be a part of this divine work. Let's dive into the text and uncover what does Hebrews chapter 3 verses 1 through 6 reveal about Jesus' identity, his role as the builder, and our calling as believers. Let's get into it. And actually, before we even start, let's actually read the text. So it says this: Therefore, holy brothers and sisters who share in the heavenly calling, fix your thoughts on Jesus, whom we acknowledge as our apostle and high priest. He was faithful to the one who appointed him, just as Moses was faithful in God's house. Jesus has been found worthy of greater honor than Moses, just as the builder of a house has greater honor than the house itself. For every house is built by someone, but God is the builder of everything. Moses was faithful as a servant in all God's house, bearing witness to what would be spoken by God in the future. But Christ is faithful as the Son over God's house, and we are his house, if indeed we hold firmly to our confidence in the hope in which we glory. So let's look at this first part, this first verse. There's a call to consider Jesus. That's the overarching thing we're seeing. There's a call to consider Christ, right? So the writer of Hebrew, he starts off with this very powerful challenge. He says, therefore, holy brothers and sisters, he says, fix your thoughts on Jesus. There's a call to a very deliberate focus. Why? Because Jesus is our apostle. He's the one who's sent from God. He's our high priest. He's our God. He's our King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He's the great God, right? Like he is it. He's the one who ultimately intercedes for us before God. Like that's important for us to capture. He's the one that intercedes for us before God. Let's go back a little bit in the historical context, right? In ancient Jewish culture, the high priest held the highest spiritual authority. And what the high priest did, he served as the mediator between God and the people. So the author of Hebrews places an emphasis that Jesus surpasses this role, providing direct access to God. So we already know from a historical context that the high priest already held the highest possible spiritual role. Like this guy is the mediator between God and people. Like that's huge. So since he's writing, to a Jewish audience, there is a little bit more of an emphasis, specifically towards sort of comparing Old Testament language to, in order to present Christ as being above those things, from a Jewish context, just to give further evidence of who Christ is and the fact that Christ is greater than those things. So the emphasis here specifically is that he surpasses this role. He provides direct access to God. So when we go a little bit further, there is another verse in Colossians chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, that it mimics this language a little bit, where he says, set your hearts on things above where Christ is. So set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. So what does that mean for us? What it really means for us is that we should question a couple of things. And I would say the main question here is, what consumes our thoughts? That's really the big question. What is consuming our thoughts? Are we fixing our mind on Jesus in our daily life? Is that the thing we're doing? That's a big question. Is he it? Is he fully it? Is he just the AM? Is he just the PM? Is he just the Sunday? Or is he everything, right? Like, that's a big question to ask ourselves. And then when we go a little bit further here in verses 2 and 4, not only are we called to fix our eyes on Jesus, to consider Jesus, right? The writer goes a little bit further. He's like, Jesus is greater than Moses. So the writer compares Jesus to Moses, one of the greatest figures in Jewish history. Moses was revered as the deliverer of Israel from Egypt, and he was the mediator of God's covenant at Mount Sinai. So Jewish Christians, for the Jewish Christian audience, Moses symbolized the foundation of their faith. Moses was a faithful servant in God's house, but Jesus is faithful as the son over God's house. The difference, question, right, is that Moses was part of the house. Jesus built the house. Consider John chapter 1 verse 17. It says, "For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ." It's like comparing the most trusted employee, the guy or gal who gets it done. They're the trusted employee to the owner of the company. Both are valuable, but only one has the ultimate authority, which is the owner. Like, that's the comparison here we're talking about. The employee of the month. There's no comparison to the owner. Still reports to the owner. The owner is still in charge. So finally, when we get to verses 5 and 6, the passage turns very personal here. It says, "We are God's house, if indeed we hold firmly to our confidence and to the hope in which we glory." So in ancient times, a household represented more than just family. It encompassed loyalty. It encompassed legacy. It shared a purpose. So being part of God's house implies belonging. It implies service. It implies a shared inheritance. When we look at 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16, it says, "Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple, that God's Spirit dwells in your midst?" So it begs the question, are we living like someone who belongs to God's house? Are we standing firm in our faith even when life gets hard? Now that we've considered this, it is a question we should really wrestle with. These are questions we need to wrestle with, in my opinion. Because what the author is arguing is that Jesus is supreme. We've seen that Jesus is supreme in this last couple of chapters here that we've been unpacking. And our place, so his supremacy, we see his supremacy, but we also see our place in God's spiritual house. So what does that mean for us today? So when we reflect on Hebrews chapter 3, verses 1 through 6, let me ask you this. Are we holding firmly to Jesus? Are we trusting his faithfulness? Remember, the stability of a house depends on its builder. So if Jesus is your foundation, your life is built on the unshakable rock. Fix your thoughts on Jesus this week. Let his faithfulness fuel your faith. Like a well-built house rooted in his word, you'll stand firm no matter what comes your way. That's the heart of this message today. And listen, if this message encourages you, be sure to share this video out with someone else. Hit the like button and share this with someone who may need to hear this, who may need this reminder. And as a community, let's do this. Let's build our lives together on Jesus, the master builder. Until the next one, see you guys.